The Murderbot Diaries are some of my absolute favorite sci-fi books, and honestly, I don't think I'm the only one because there is now a hit Apple TV show called Murderbot. Today, I am actually getting to talk with Martha Wells, author of the Murderbot Diaries, the newest of which is Platform Decay, which comes out May 5th. Thank you so much for being here, Martha.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
For folks who might live under a rock, what is the Murderbot Diaries?
It's a far future science fiction novella series, mostly novellas and a couple of novels about the life of a character who's part machine and part organic called a security unit or sec unit. And these constructs are basically enslaved by corporations to do various things, guard mining camps, expeditions, that kind of thing. And they have these governor modules that keep them from being able to do anything except obey orders. And Murderbot actually has been able to hack its own governor module. So now it has free will, but it has no idea what to do with that. And usually in that position, sec units are that do that are called rogues, and they are thought to go on these rampages and violent rampages and kill humans, and sometimes they actually do. But instead of that, Murderbot ends up basically going through their version of the internet and finding all this entertainment media to download and watch and read and everything. So it's doing that and pretending to still be an under control sec unit and kind of half-assing its job, and ends up being rented by a small expedition of scientists who are surveying this planet, and then it ends up having to reveal what it is in order to save their lives.
The first book, All Systems Red, is really a wonderful introduction because we get to meet people outside of the system that made these sec units. And Dr. Mensa is such a wonderful character. Like, I love her so much.
Oh, I do too. She's probably one of my favorite characters, and yeah, Noma Dumezweni plays her on the show so perfectly. It's just incredible.
When you were choosing where to start, did you want to intentionally start with people who weren't inside this corporate entity type of deal?
Yeah, they're from a planet that's outside the corporation rim, and the corporation rim is controlled by corporations, so is fairly oppressive in a lot of ways. It has a lot of really great technology, but the rights of the individual are very low down on the scale to the rights of the corporations to make money. So you have basically contract slavery, you have enslaved sec units, and other constructs. So it's not it's not a very good place to live. And they're from a planet outside the corporation rim, which has basically a lot more, um, um, I think, what we would think of as a normal life there, where the individual care of the individual comes first. People have rights that are legally protected. Um, and it wasn't really so much of a decision to start with getting to know that group as so much as these were the kind of people that Murderbot was going to risk itself, revealing itself to save. So that was the initial plot. And actually, I originally thought of it as being a short story. And then as I was writing it, it was clearly short stories have to be like 7 to 10,000 words. So it just wasn't going to fit into that. So novella format seemed the best for it.
And the first, what is it, four or five are novellas, right?
Yeah, it was sold to Tor.com, and that publisher, they're part of the Tor publishing group now. under Macmillan, and they were doing a novella line, and then they, I think after the maybe third year, they kind of advanced to start doing some novels, but mostly they wanted to do novellas, which are around under 40,000 words, and they wanted to do some series, and they did some great ones too that are still available.
I do love their novella lineup, and because there's so much science fiction and fantasy in it, and
Yeah,
like
and the
stories you
covers are
wouldn't think.
gorgeous too.
Yeah.
The artwork is gorgeous.
I really love the original artist from the series.
Yeah, that's Jamie Jones. The way they did the cover, I thought would of the first of All Systems Red was really brilliant, of showing Murderbot as a scary figure. And then you open the book and you read the first sentence and you can't see Murderbot as scary again.
Even though Murderbot definitely tries to portray themselves as scary.
Yeah, yeah,
So that kind of brings up the structure of how you've written these, and they're all from Sec Unit or Murderbot's point of view. And they have these wonderful little like file accessing file
yeah.
memories. Decide that you wanted this all told from just one perspective, but also to include these little anecdotes.
I think just for the first story, that was kind of, I don't usually write in first person. I usually do a very close perspective, third person. But with Murderbot, it really felt like the right way to tell that story. And so I didn't want to change that for any of the other books. And I was starting to, as I was working with that, realizing that I could kind of think outside the box and use the fact that Murderbot is part machine to do things like, yes, bring up files and show them to the reader and all these other things that I couldn't do with in a more, human character's point of view. When, I could do it, I guess, but it wouldn't make as much sense.
You do kind of, I wouldn't say slip into other people's perspectives, but you do have these moments of pretty close observation from Sec Unit, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah, it does. It has some problems reading humans, but then it's still learning how to do that. But it also has these modules that allow it to read body language and kind of judge whether someone is going to be a threat or not. And so that kind of lets it figure out more what people might be thinking. It's not always right, but it tries to do it a lot.
Well, that kind of brings up one of my favorite characters too, which is Art, the sentient ship who thinks he's omniscient.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite characters. And originally, when I started writing Artificial Condition, um, All Systems Red was not, it only took me about a month to write, but the others usually have taken me 3 to 4 months. And then Network Effect probably took me about a year and a half at least. I tend to write about maybe as much as 20,000 words of the story and then end up taking most of it out. And I did that with Artificial Condition just because it just wasn't working. And I realized I needed to start earlier with Murderbot actually still showing how it escaped from port free commerce. And originally, Art was just a line where Murderbot referred to a transport that helped it with the medical unit to change its appearance a little bit so it wouldn't be easily spotted as a sec unit. I realized I needed to show that. And when I started writing that scene, Art just kind of showed up as a foil to Murderbot. And it worked out really well. And it became one of my favorite characters too.
If you didn't intend to have Art there, did you write part of the story just kind of with Art as a very minimal tertiary character?
Yeah, it was just mentioned in passing, and I actually started when Murderbot, I think, got to Ravi High Roll, the station it was going to. And so it kind of started from there, and it just was not working for different reasons. I was just approaching it wrong, I think. And it was also, this was the first one I had written after Murderbot had, you know, escaped from the company and left Dr. Mensa and the others. So yeah, I was still really working on its character development. I think I just needed to kind of write the wrong thing for a while before I kind of figured out what the right thing was going to be.
I think younger or maybe more inexperienced writers don't understand that sometimes you need to write what doesn't work in order to figure
Yeah,
it out.
yeah, and some people, everybody's different. Everybody writes differently, and everybody's process is a little bit different. But yeah, sometimes you need to do that. And also sometimes, I don't know, when you get a really strong character voice, like Murderbot, it's kind of, you can kind of write it doing anything, but that doesn't mean that needs to be in the story, or you're telling the right story for to show the development of that character. So you really have to, you know, edit yourself a lot more than you normally have to.
Is that how some of the short stories came about?
No, I actually I think for all the short stories, I was actually asked to write a short story. There's the first one, compulsory, that I was asked for. It was a thing in Wired magazine I was asked to contribute to that's about the future of work. And there were several different science fiction authors that did really good stories. And so I ended up doing, I thought Murderbot, the future of work, it really does, it really does fit in. And the future of work under a corporation, basically, of people being disposable. The next one, the one that's set on preservation with that's from Dr. Mensa's perspective was actually the publisher asked for a short story for their online website, which is now called Reactor, and at that time it was just called Tor.com because they started out as a website for the original publisher Tor. And then the third one was the same rapport that's from Iris's perspective, who's Art's favorite human.
I love that they have favorite humans too,
Yeah.
because it's very funny.
It's kind of like pets you can talk to, I guess.
They do kind of treat them as fragile, like,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah. And they are fragile to a machine intelligence, especially to something like art,
Yeah.
which is, can be vulnerable if it's hit the right way, but mostly is fairly indestructible.
He does he does get into some situations in System Collapse and kind of Platform Decay. I mean, it's more like passing references, but
Yeah, art in system collapse is just there. It can create iterations of itself. So it's partially downloading a smaller version of itself into a drone to accompany them. I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, that makes it more vulnerable, but you still have the original art who's controlling the ship.
it's really hard to talk about Platform Decay for me because it is book 8 in a series. And I don't want spoilers, but
Yeah.
one of the things I noticed the most in the book is it seems like Murderbot has really grown as a character, and I like reading the first ones. I wouldn't have expected the growth to have happened.
Yeah, I mean it came a long way. And um I think that's probably one of the reasons why Network Effect took me such a long time to write because after the first few novellas, it was really showing a growth period, but it's also sort of dealing with its own PTSD finally,
Yeah.
which kind of comes to a head um, at the beginning of System Collapse, and it's trying to deal with it with Art's help and with the help of the other humans that are there. And in Platform Decay, you see that a little further along, where it's actually managing it in some ways. They're trying to find, since nobody's ever treated a sec unit or a construct for PTSD before, they're trying different things and kind of doing a combination of what would work for a human and what might work for a machine intelligence. And Um, it's not working as great as they would like, but it is, you can see that it seemed to be working.
You could tell from the very beginning that Dr. Mensa was, and the other people from preservation were very interested in Sec Unit getting some mental help.
Yeah, and which is funny because it very much understands as part of its programming that humans need mental health help, especially after they've been through traumatic experiences. So, and it's not really applying that to itself. So,
I thought Alexander Skarsgård did such a wonderful job inhabiting this like emotionless, well, not even emotionless, just kind of stoic.
yeah, of presenting a really stoic exterior, but from the voiceover and just he'll move two muscles in his face, and Murderbot is absolutely horrified at what's going on. It's just he's just really, really good at the micro expressions that you can read pretty easily, but you could understand how the people who aren't, you know, watching his face on TV are not that would be around him would not pick up on that for that Murderbot was feeling these things.
And in the book, it tries to wear a helmet and a mask so that people can't look at it and it doesn't have to look you in the eyes.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't like eye contact. It's just um it's very self-protective. And that was basically a huge leap for it having to when it leaves and can't have the armor anymore and has to basically pretend to be human, which is something it just absolutely hates doing.
So when the TV series was filming, you actually got to go to set and kind of sit in, right?
Yeah, I had been working with them as a consulting producer. I think it started in 2021. I think we had the first phone call and started talking about it. And I'd seen the production paintings and gone over stuff. And we talked about a lot of the changes and everything. And they had sent me, they would send me photos and little clips from the filming and all that. And they're just really fun and call me and ask me questions. Um, I wanted to be there for a longer time period, but I was working on Queen Demon, which is the fancy novel that just came out in October. It's a sequel to Witch King. And so I didn't really have a lot of time, so I just went up there for one day. And yeah, it was fascinating to watch. It's like I love TV and movies, and I've watched a lot of documentaries about seeing how it's made and her interviews and everything, but just being there. Somebody said that a movie is when 100 people get together to tell a story. And you see that very clearly when you're on the set of something, especially like something science fiction and fantasy, where the costumers have to do all this world building to figure out what the fabrics are going to look like and what people are going to be wearing and why they're going to wear that. And um, how there was a lot of effort to try to get the preservation culture reflected in their clothes and reflected in how they kind of styled the habitat and didn't want it to just be this plain, boring, very corporate prison-like, structure and all that stuff and just from the people doing the props and you would make the prop and then you would make the version of the prop when it was blown up and and just all the attention to detail and care everyone had to put into it. It was just fascinating, and it was really they were only working on one scene that day with a guest director, Roseanne Lang from New Zealand, and who's fabulous. And watching her work and just on this scene with the whole group of actors in the hopper um, over the course of the day, and how they would just tweak it as it went along, and it would get better each time. It was just really fascinating. It was a little bit like watching someone edit a book, just
Ooh.
three dimensionally.
It feels like they really captured the heart of the story too,
Yeah.
which I was so confused how they were going to make an 8-part TV show out of the first novella.
Yeah. Well, it's ten episodes.
Oh, 10, yeah.
And that's why they kind of had to add some subplots to, and also I think one thing that helped is in Murderbot's first person, it refers to things that happened in like one or two sentences, and that the reader needs or the viewer needs to know, so they have to show those, and so that also gives them a lot of opportunity to show more of the human characters, and you get to know them a little bit better.
You get a really detailed view of who Murderbot was before too, which it seems a little bit longer than it was in the book, and maybe it's just visually for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that little introduction, I think that they really needed that to show basically how just bad it got at the very beginning, how bad it was. And they do that because I think you don't really see too much of how awful it is for a sec unit until the last episode. The way, they're disposing of them. You hear Murderbot talks about this, but actually to see, yes, this was a thing that was really going to happen, I think has a big impact.
Do you find that your writing stayed the same after the TV show and experiencing how they made it, or did it change at all?
I think it's stayed the same. For one thing, I can't do all those jobs, the casting and all that kind. I just can't. Those are all like really specific jobs, and so I really just think about writing it the way I normally do. And people ask me that too about the audiobooks narrated by Kevin R. Free, and also there's a kind of a full cast audio that's also out now. And it's like if that changes the way I write them, and it's like, no. Because sometimes I'm doing something thinking, gosh, I wonder how they're going to get this across in the audiobook. Well, I don't know. That's their job.
Kevin R. Free does such a good job
He is
as,
really great. He's fabulous. We're lucky to have him.
and I like that he's been really consistent throughout the series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just really good at at doing that.
So I take it you've listened to the audiobooks, at least some of them. Is
Yeah,
it
at least
strange?
some. I don't do the whole thing. Um, I'm not really an audiobook person. And I know
Okay.
I have some friends that, I mean, they've read the book and then they'll listen to it in audio too. Because they can't, it's sort of like once you read it, I guess it's easier to visualize. So they'll like turn it on while they're house cleaning or something just to keep them company. And it's like, I think that's really cool.
I had a really terrible blizzard drive one night, and I want to say it was All Systems Red on because it's very calming with Dr. Mensa. But
Yeah, it can really help you. I've had some bad drives where we were listening to Eddie Izzard's audiobook.
oh,
That was really good and really funny and kept us company.
I've not heard any of the dramatization versions. Are they much different than the regular audiobook?
I think they're different. They had to kind of compress it a little bit
Okay.
because it's a full cast doing the parts, so it is different. It's a different experience.
I'll
More
have to
like a
look one
radio
up.
play, I think, than an audiobook narration.
So kind of going back to the ideas of platform decay. Um, in this one, Sec Unit is with a bunch of children. It does not want to be around
Yeah,
particularly. Was it difficult writing children in this kind of like dark environment?
not really. I think in reality, children are in a lot of dark situations, especially now, everywhere, especially in our country. And so it didn't feel weird or anything to put them in it. I wanted to the original idea was it is of a kind of the trip from hell on the Taurus station, and then it sort of started morphing into family road trip from hell. So yeah, having kids there was kind of really it felt like it was important to that.
They also feel different than the adults in the previous books. So, like, good job. Like, I would not be able to do this.
Well, good. I'm that's really good to hear. Yeah, because I never, it's really kind of you have all the technique in the world, but you don't know if you're getting it right or not.
Now that you've hit book eight or story eight, effectively, do you think that there'll be a conclusion to Murderbot's stories?
Yeah, the next one I write is going to be the conclusion.
Okay.
It's the last one. Um, Originally, the books were the first and second novella were contracted, and then the third and fourth, and then Network Effect, and then I signed a 6 book contract with
Oh,
Tor.com, which was the three murder bots, and then the Witch King, Queen Demon, and then the third one I'm working on now, Hierarch. So the next murder bot will be the last one because I think really Murderbot's story is kind of not necessarily coming to a conclusion, but um, it's progressed enough that we know it's going to be okay, basically.
spoiler alert, it's gonna be okay.
Going to be okay.
The books do have a lot of hope in them for as dismal as Murderbot can feel
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. Well, I think you kind of have to. I wouldn't want to. I'm depressed enough as it is. I don't want to write something too depressing. So, yeah, I think that's kind of important to keep that in there.
Is it difficult switching back and forth between your high fantasy novel and this far future technology?
Not really, because all the technology in Murderbot is far future made up. Some of it can feel realistic because it's based on I used to be one of my first jobs was as a programmer, a COBOL programmer, which tells you how long ago that was, and working in system support and customer support and um, building databases and that kind of thing. So it's based on that, but it's all fake, you know, and just the way, I mean, like artificial and I get asked a lot is if how I feel about now we have technology of artificial intelligence, and of course we don't have technology with artificial intelligence. We don't have machine intelligence, and we won't have it for probably a long time. Um, what we have are large language models, which are basically advanced chat bots that are really good at um, putting together words that their programming says you want to hear based on what you say. So then that's not machine intelligence. There's no consciousness. And actually, I was talking to my Slovenian translator about this a little bit, and I started to say it's like talking to a parrot. And I realized that's not right at all because a parrot has a consciousness
Yeah.
and it knows it's talking to another entity. It knows you exist, and chatbots absolutely do not have any consciousness. They're not aware of you as a person or an entity or anything. So it's just a program responding to input. Um, so yeah, and it's really kind of scary and sad how um, so many people are believing this, which is basically sales hype,
Yeah.
that this is a machine intelligence that's capable of doing things like giving you therapy or giving you advice. And it's gotten people killed,
Yeah.
and it's going to continue to do that if it's just allowed to go on.
It is really concerning, and I was shocked by how quickly the like rise to we want to be with these things like it's
Yeah,
concerning.
people are talking about their chatbot lover and everything, and it's it's like talking about, a coffee cup is your lover. It's really not. It's there's nothing there. But it really shows how powerful corporations can, when they want to sell you something, what lengths they're willing to go to separate you from your money, and and kind of control this market. And it's just really a good example of that. Basically propaganda in a lot of ways, of just insisting these things well, they have consciousness. No, well, they're almost having they contradict each other a lot. And it's like listening to fanatics just go on and trying to figure out what to say to, I think about sinners, like vampires trying to convince you what to say to come out that door. And yeah, get eaten. So yeah, it's not a great situation we're in now with that.
So you mentioned earlier that people ask you about AI because of artificial condition and art, I'm assuming. But it feels like the major theme of these books is corporate control and like controlling how people move and the things they do.
Yeah, very much so. It was weird when Compulsory came out, which is the little short story that was in Wired magazine, which I now think you can get online. Um, it's about basically these workers, and Murderbot basically makes a choice to rescue one of the workers because it's just seen a character it likes on its TV show, get killed. And it got a review where these people were talking about, well, these people in this future short story should join a union. And it was like, I think the point, phew, yeah. It's like that's kind of the point. We're in a corporate future where corporations control everything. There's not going to be any union. There's no protection. You can sign a contract that says this and that. If there's nothing to enforce it, you're hung out to dry, and you're just basically a product, for them to exploit. And yeah. So it's amazing how we've all grown up in this world, and how some people are just not quite twigging to what this really means.
I do wonder how much that is with the fact that we live in the United States and there are a lot of protections for workers. But if you go to like, I don't know, India, you're not going to have any of those same
Yeah.
protections.
Well, which is, we're losing some of our protections every
Yeah.
day. They're getting eroded. And which is why the so many companies will take their manufacturing or to Africa or India, and finding countries in Africa that don't have any protections for workers. Like that's where a lot of the workers who actually monitor the supposedly autonomous AI are actually, the people who control the Waymos, and apparently even like sex chat bots and things like that. Yeah, you're finding out more and more about it. It's pretty horrible for them because of what they're having to do, and also the fact that they get paid so little for it, and their living conditions are not great. And yeah, it's just exploitation all the way down. We're actually having this conversation on Blue Sky about this, about the Blue Sky, and then I talked to a class at Texas A&M, that it feels like robot stories are a metaphor for slavery, enslavement of intelligent beings, and but machine intelligence AI stories are all about exploitation. And it's kind of woven into what they are. And it's interesting that, yeah, the AI this quote unquote AI we supposedly have now are all built on exploitation of human workers.
Huh. And well, and the environment and
And the
everything.
environment, yeah, the horrible effects from having a data center nearby where just the pollution and the noise and it just affects everyone's health and yeah, it's just making the environment die faster, you know? It's like what yeah, well we could go on about that. We could probably sit here and wonder about people and rant about it for an hour. So we probably shouldn't do that. But yeah, yeah, definitely.
But kind of going back into like Murderbot, in all systems red, Murderbot is not trying to do anything but stay invisible.
Yeah, yeah. You think about if you had never had you always had to wait for an order to be able to move. You couldn't, if you did the wrong thing, you would get punished painfully and possibly killed. And it would do a lot of things to your impulse control, basically. And so when it has freedom, it doesn't want to run around and kill people. That would interfere with being able to get these shows off, their entertainment channels. And so it just does nothing. And I think that felt very real at the time, is that you would kind of be paralyzed for a while. And it would take being brought into this situation where you were having to act more and more to help keep people alive, before you could kind of work yourself up to realize that you should take the first opportunity to take off, basically.
It seemed like the impetus for change for Murderbot or SecUnit was the fact that people from preservation needed to be protected.
Yeah,
Um,
because it likes the humans. It talks about how much it likes the humans on the entertainment media, and so it's finally meeting and being around humans who are like that, and wanting to protect them and wanting to do the job it was designed for, which is basically protecting people. It's not really designed for killing people. It's designed for protecting people, and wanting to do that, and everything kind of combines. Yeah, and at the end, when I was first writing it, I didn't know what the end was going to be, because when I first came up with it, I thought it would have a sad ending and Murderbot would die trying to protect them. And then as I was writing it, I was like, no, that's not what I want. That's not really what I want to do with this. But I could decide if it would stay with them and go back to preservation or leave. And it was kind of going back and forth on it until I got to that ending. And it's like, yeah, it's going to leave, because if it stays with them at this point, it's going to be like trading up to a nicer captor, as opposed to it really had to prove to itself that it could take care of itself. And it kind of had to prove it to them too. So when it comes back to preservation finally and exit strategy, it's more there as an equal. And nobody's trying to tell it what to do or take care of it. They're just, it's just their friend.
I want to say Dr. Mensa even mentioned something about paying SecUnit in exit or
Yeah, that they'll actually, because in on preservation you get you get reimbursed for your work somehow,
yeah.
with either with money, with food or shelter, with so much of the resources goes to the population, of supporting the population and making sure, whoops, taking care of everybody and that kind of thing. And Murderbot doesn't need a lot of those things. So, and it kind of doesn't want to belong to preservation. It wants to be more of a free agent and leave. And so, yeah, having engaging in employment contracts to be paid for its work is the next step in that.
So one of the last things I kind of wanted to cover was the dramas that Murderbot is obsessed with. Did you watch a lot of daytime TV growing up?
I did. I can't remember the name now. Oh gosh. I think it was Guiding Light I ended up watching for a while, and because it came on at lunch, I think in our time zone, um, for a long time, and just and then I wanted to really give that feel and the telenovela feel, which is like the U.S. soap opera turned up several notches, and I wanted that way that soap operas sort of run into what do we do next, and then get more and more out there, and people's identical twin shows up that they never knew about, and and all this other weird stuff they'll get into that kind of breaks the barrier between soap opera and science fiction and fantasy. But show that, also kind of get the feel of a daytime drama. Like we were getting some, when I was writing it, there was some really good, I mean, nighttime drama, excuse me, like How to Get Away with Murder,
Oh yeah.
where it started out being a show about lawyers and then suddenly just went into all this um, um, mystery and drama, and who was murdered, who murdered who, and all that kind of thing. It's like how could one group of people have so much to do with murders? But it was so good. It was such a good show, and it was really engaging. And so I kind of wanted something of that feel, but in a more science fictional context. And other shows, the other ones, Cruel Romance Personage is kind of the titles are meant a little bit to sound almost like bad translations, because you think a lot of these are going to be produced in different languages for different cultures around the corporation rim and outside the corporation rim, and so they'll be translated, when you watch them. Fun things. I usually have a vague idea of a real show to base them on, so that I can kind of keep track of what would be happening on this particular one when Murderbot mentions it.
So you actually try and keep track.
Not in detail, because Sanctuary Moon is so far out there. Yeah, the idea with Sanctuary Moon is to make whatever it happens, it describes on it, sound a little bit normal, and then off to, Bizarro Town, basically.
It adds so much texture to the world and these dramas.
Yeah, I mean, people are still going to want this kind of entertainment. I mean, we've had it ever since people figured out how to write. So,
And I think especially in a society where you literally have no other things to do in the corporation, like dramas are your escape, I would assume.
yeah, you see people, they got that really accurately in the TV show, that a lot of these jobs, people are locked into them for years at a time and are demeaning, or just mentally exhausting, or just, dying of boredom kind of thing. And with no pride in the work, because they know nobody cares. And so yeah, that kind of you need something to just the way we do. I mean, they call it escapism, but it's just you need like this mental relief from everyday life.
Well, Murderbot is mental relief for me, but it also brings up a lot of things that I wouldn't normally want to be thinking about too.
Well, sometimes that's part of it. Sometimes it's easier to think about those things in a fictional context. And that's like, I was doing a lecture one time, and afterwards, someone asked me about, he was worried about his nieces and nephews because they were reading all this post-apocalyptic fiction,
Mhm.
because that was when Hunger Games and all that was coming out. So there was a big thing of, and there was, I remember reading that too as a kid. There was, it's always been before young adult as a category even existed.
Yeah.
There's always been stuff like that. And I said, that's just them. That's how kids learn to process these kinds of ideas. If you can read it in a book and live it through those characters, it helps armor you against the concept. It helps build I think feel like mental strength against these kinds of things, which they're going to need later in life, and that's why they know that, and that's why they're gravitating toward these books.
I love the analysis of when these types of stories come back into vogue or there are certain things that make these popular again. So like unrest in our society usually means dystopian's going to be back in the
Yeah.
spotlight.
Yeah, and part of it's people want to deal with it. You know, you need to deal with it mentally, and reading it about it happening to characters that you're engaged with is a big part of that.
So you said you're working on the third book for your fantasy.
Yeah.
Are you working on anything else or do you have any plans for anything else?
After I finish this book, I'll move on to the next Murderbot book, which will probably be the last one. And that's about it for now because yeah, I've tried before to work on two things at once and it just does not. It just means you do both of them slower than you would if you had just finished one and then went on to the other.
I'm always somewhat baffled when people tell me they're working on two projects or they have these two things going, and I'm like, I'm confused thinking about it.
Yeah, you know, it's like everybody's process is different, and some people, you know, they just they're energized by that as opposed to just feeling like overwhelmed. That's what I would be.
And then the last question is there somewhere that people can go to get signed books or to follow what you're doing next online?
Yeah. My website is marthawells.com. I used to have an update thing that would go out, but it looks like the that my ISP is changing that. So I don't know if I'm, whoops, sorry. I don't know if that's going to be happening anymore. But I'm also on Blue Sky as marthawells.com. I'm on I have a Dream With journal, which is linked to my website. I'm on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook or Threads or any other site. There's a big problem right now with AI chatbots
Yeah.
emailing people as authors to ask for money and pretend they're reading your work and stuff like that. So there's people pretending to be me on Facebook, but I'm not actually on Facebook.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Is there anywhere people can order signed copies?
Oh yeah. Hyperbole Bookstore in College Station, Texas. They you can just order through their online their website and just mention that you want a signed copy of one of my books, whichever book you're ordering, and they'll call me and I'll go down and sign it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This has been fun.
If anyone out there has enjoyed listening or watching this conversation, please rate or like or follow, share, or leave me a comment and let me know what you like about Murderbot or if you like the TV show more than the books. I assume there's going to be some weirdos out there who
Yeah.
do.
Whichever, as long as you like one of them, that's fine.
I'm down. I thought the TV show was so very well put together. So,
I did too. I enjoyed it. I loved it.
and as always, I hope everybody has a lovely, lovely day. Bye.